They think you're just as crazy as they are. Moving quickly now, talking about guns. ISIS is gunning down Christians in Egypt, but nobody cares because that's politically correct for them to do so. If a Christian man shot somebody else of another religion, it would be an international sensation, but they killed the gentleman. Also, a Hindu priest was killed back on June 7th, and you didn't hear anything about that because it's not politically correct to talk about that. And briefly, before we go to break, come back with more special reports. Milo, you guys recall him, Joe Biggs, and he traveled around the country going to various rallies. Milo is going to hold a gay pride parade in Sweden, Swedish Muslim ghetto, because I don't know if you guys saw the report that Biggs, Leanne, and our new hire, Margaret, did, talking about the rape-free bracelets. And when you go to these countries, just hold up your thing, they won't rape you or attack you. It's a complete joke, so he's going to go there to point that out, as well as other things. Stay tuned after this for more special reports.
There are plans here in Texas for a high-speed rail project between Dallas and Houston. Now, that would not be national news, but what is national news is the process of eminent domain. This is something that is going to happen in your community. This is a glimpse of how large corporations and the federal government are coming into a state and running roughshod over the rights of individuals. Joining us now is Judge Ben Lamont. He is a Grimes County, Texas judge. We're talking to Judge Lamont because he is one of a number of people, county judges that we've talked to and others who are concerned about the Texas Central Rail Project. This is a high-speed rail project that's going to be running between Houston and Dallas. And it's an issue of national concern because this shows us what is going on with eminent domain, this process that is being shut down by major corporations, how they're railroading people in small areas like this. And understand, this isn't just about the rights of the few. They're going to be coming after your rights as well this way if we don't get the process right. If the people who are involved here are not compensated fairly, if they don't have full due process, they will do this to you wherever you live in this country. This is a foreign corporation that's coming in here, a Japanese corporation that's coming in here, allied with big business, big government, railroading this literally through the central parts of Texas, through these small towns, and these people want to have a say. So joining us now is Judge Ben Lamont. Thank you so much for joining us, Judge.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the history of this. How did this all come about? How did you first learn about this? How was it received by the community when they learned about this?
I first learned about it approximately, I guess, December of 2014, somewhere towards the end of 2014. And it was, of course, not received well by many people. We learned that, as it was promoted at the time, was that it would go along or go in existing rights of way. That's how it was initially promoted.
Along with existing things like existing railroad beds or highways that are already there, that they would not need to cut through new paths through private property.
That's correct. For the most part, the bulk of the project, there might have been a small part of the project that did not go in an existing easement, but the vast majority of it was promoted and marketed as if it was going to go in existing rights of way, like a transmission line or right in the existing right of way of an existing railroad.
And then you found out that they're not going to do that. As a matter of fact, they've got two routes. They haven't even decided which routes are going to go down, and yet they want to condemn property and confiscate property in both of these routes, even though they don't know which route is going down. Tell us a little bit about how they are skirting the typical process for eminent domain and what that process would be.
Sure. And this is a very complicated project in itself. It's unlike any other rail project. Obviously, this is a high-speed rail project. But what they are attempting to do is they're trying to get the jurisdiction to be the federal government. That's the first issue. This clearly is a state project, should be regulated by the state of Texas, not the federal government. This is an intrastate project. It goes from point to point. Dallas to Houston does not connect into any other transportation mode that then in turn goes across state lines. So that's the first issue. They're trying to get jurisdiction to be the federal government via the Surface Transportation Board.
So there's federal overreach involved here, and of course one of the reasons for that, I believe, is because the corporation that's going to run this is going to be a Japanese corporation.
Well, they are the front company, I guess is what you would call it, the face company of this project, I believe, is incorporated in Delaware. all the bulk of the financial, I mean, maybe 99% of the financing of this has been committed from Japanese Bank of International Cooperation. So definitely Japanese-backed project. It's a Japanese train, Japanese business, it's Japanese government. That's the Japan Bank of International Cooperation. That's a state government over a state entity, and they are committing to financing the whole project. So the front organization, the face front, is this. They claim to be a Texas organization, but it's really a front for Japanese interests.
So you've got the federal government exerting authority here in an area that is clearly self-contained inside the state of Texas. They should not have any involvement. What is the federal government doing to shut down normal regulations and to shut down the normal process?
So far, the federal government hasn't taken any action. So what's happened is this Texas Central Railway has filed 2 petitions with the Surface Transportation Board. The first petition, and these are the mechanisms they are using to try to circumvent the normal procedures that are, they being Texas Central Railway, trying to circumvent the normal procedures that ensure the due process and adequate compensation, fair compensation for the instances you were describing before. So these 2 petitions they're filing are, the first one is a petition for clarification, and the second one is a petition for exemption of of certain regulations. So I'll take them one at a time. The petition for clarification is simply asking for what they call a clarification, but it's really rewriting law. It's a clarification to make apparent that condemnation is not part of the quote unquote defined construction process. Okay, so historically speaking, construction, the definition of construction in the context of the Surface Transportation Board is backed up by case law. It includes condemnation. And so they're asking for a clarification to exclude condemnation, or the first half of condemnation, from the definition of construction.
So essentially what we've got here in Texas is a 2-step process, right? We got Texas 2-step. They want to get rid of that first step completely and streamline this process, right?
Well, they want to get rid of multiple steps. So that's the first part, and the exemption from regulations would then allow them to do things out of sequence. For instance, it would allow them, they're very clearly asking for the ability to initiate the condemnation process before they have a defined route. As you said earlier, they don't have a defined route yet. Before the environmental impact study is complete, before the project has ever even been approved by the federal government or state government, before they have their financial package reviewed to make sure that that the money is there to actually not end up halfway down the road and not enough money to complete the project. There's a whole series of regulations that normally occur in a sequence for a project of this nature, especially a startup company that's never operated and still does not operate a high-speed rail to this day. Wow. So they are asking clearly, and in their petition, they clearly acknowledge on a sworn, verified statement from the CEO, Tim Keith, that they understand this could result that they would condemn properties, or could condemn properties that they would not even need.
Well, let me ask you about that, because we only got a couple of minutes left. If they take your property, and because we can talk about what happens when they come through and perhaps, I guess, just compensate people for the swath of land that they take, but they might cut somebody's property in half. They also affect the real estate values throughout the community when they run that high-speed train rail through there, lowering their values. And those people, I guess, would not be compensated. But what about the people that they take their land and they don't even use it for the railroad? What happens then? Does the railroad will they be able to later then sell that as a higher price after the value goes up and people find that it's not going to have a railroad running through it?
It's a good point. The real damage is caused by the disruption of somebody's life. You know, by then everybody's had to move away. They're gone. They moved and changed their whole life to go around this railroad project that didn't even happen. I don't know how you undo that damage. I don't think you can, and there's not a price tag associated with it. You know, the other broken part of the condemnation process for this particular project is we've never had a high-speed rail. So the condemnation process, as it stands today in Texas, for a project of this nature, you could have a situation, let's say if somebody had 500 acres and their house was, let's say 6,000 feet away from the rail line, you could have somebody that's across the street, maybe 300 feet away from it. But since the rail does not go over their property, even though their home is closer to that rail than the property that's on, they would not get a dime. Right, your governor, lieutenant governor, your state elected officials, that's where the real battle we hope is going to end up at the end of the day. Please let them know that the process is broken for this and that you're against the project. It's going to end up in taxpayer subsidy. We're going to pay for it multiple times, and it's an abuse of eminent domain.
Thank you so much, Judge. Good luck in your fight. And again, you're chairman of the Texans Against High-Speed Rail, Judge Ben Lamont. Thank you so much. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
The air clear about this. The email scandal, I believe, was brought out by the Clintons.
Now, I would be pleased to talk more about this important matter, but I know there have been questions about my emails, so I want to address that directly, and then I will take a few questions from you.
You see, we knew running for election, you never want to run as the anointed one. You always want to run as the underdog. Now, it's kind of hard when you're building Hillary Clinton with all the hoopla and who they are now. How do you get to be the underdog? If you look at the email scandal, where did the email scandal come from? The New York Times. The New York Times has never been anything but a PR firm for the Clintons. Even if they had it, there is no way the New York Times would have broke a story about Hillary that could do damage to her. But look what she's done. They have used the email scandal to catapult them into an underdog status. Now, as we get closer to the election, when you get through the primary and you get into the general election, I can tell you, New York Times, read my lips. Go ahead and write the article. It's probably already written. Right when they get into the general election, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, oh, we've checked all this out, and it turns out there was nothing to it. That's what's going to happen. It's all used to stage Hillary. Now, if you don't believe me, remember when Hillary ran against Barack Hussein Obama. She should have used our system then, but she didn't. She came in and she was the anointed one, and he whooped her. She's not making that mistake this time. And by the way, if you notice, Hillary's also done the other thing you have to do at the formative stage of a campaign. She's gone around, she's sucked up all of the money that's out there. So anybody tries to run against her, I hear people ask me, what do you think about Biden? I don't think about anybody. What are they going to run against her with? They have already laid claim to the money.
Once the American public begins to see the emails, they will have an unprecedented insight into a high government official's daily communications, which I think will be quite interesting. You may have seen that I recently launched a Snapchat account. Those messages disappear all by themselves.
You see, when Hillary gets in office within 6 months, according to the plan we wrote back in 1986, literally there's a plan called the 86 plan, and it's where we finalized and put everything down. Within 6 months, she will make Bill ambassador to the UN. When Bill gets to be ambassador to the UN, it won't be 6 months then because of the Clinton Foundation, what they've used the Clinton Foundation for. It won't be 6 months until he's made Secretary General of the UN. Now, can you imagine the power Bill and Hillary have? I mean, they will have achieved more power than any couple in the history of the world when they pull that stunt.
On January 20th, 1993, William Jefferson Clinton became the 42nd President of the United States.